In episode 20, we are going to create a validation for the settlement post and settlement transaction date. These two dates are utilized when we perform bank reconciliation, one of the bookkeeping feature that is supported in this DIY accounting system. Alright, the validation is pretty similar to the one that we did on the transaction date. Let me create two extra columns for the settlement dates. Just paste the name, format that, Control 1, fill that with dark, and I'm going to rename these two columns. So this one is called the settlement post date value. I just call it date value. Just make it a little bit bigger, and this one add a date value to it. It's going to return a 5-digit number like the transaction date. So I just copy that, right click, and then copy the formula. And I'm going to change the formula a little bit. Instead of the transaction date, I'm going to change it to, forgot the name, settle post date. So just change it to settle underscore post date. This one, and this one also, settle post date. And this one, settle post date. And we do the same for the settle transaction date. These two dates may be different. The date that you bank in the money and the date that you receive the check may be different. Just change the post date to trans date. So it should be this one. Change this one to trans date and this one to trans date. Enter. The next two columns that I'm going to create is the date validation. Copying these two columns and then right click. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. Rename this one to settle post date valid underscore valid to stand for data validation. This one is for valid. Okay, let me see. Yep. And let me change the format. Control 1, fill that with dark and yellow font. Save it. I'm going to grab the transaction date validation column and change it to fit. Just paste in formula. And let me change this one to settlement post date validation. Okay. Actually, the two conditions are pretty much the same, but instead of transaction num validation, I'm going to change it to settle trans num validation. Okay, because we have to enter settlement transaction before we enter the date. Okay, so we just change this one to settle trans num validation. So it's this one. So let me just go back. And instead of the transaction date, I'm going to enter the settle post date, this one. And instead of the transaction date value, I'm going to change it to settle post date value. Okay, so if you like this, it depends on these two columns. Press enter, save it, and copy that for settlement transaction date. Just right click, paste the formula. Go to the settle trans date validation and change the date. The settlement trans num validation stays the same because we need the user to enter the settlement transaction number before they enter the settlement transaction date. So we only change the OR formula part. Instead of settle post date, we change it to transaction date. Okay, it was very easy. Press enter. Now we can go to these two columns. Before we move on, let me show you a trick to enter the date. If you look up from the description, it says a backslash on the date, right? But indeed, if you want to enter the backslash like this, you have to enter a single quote. Let's say if I want to enter November 12th, then I have to enter 12 backslash 11 backslash 2018 for November 12th. So let me go to the backend that we just create, which is the settlement post date value. Usually I'll check my date like this, so I have November 12th. Press Ctrl 1 to bring up the format cells. Go to date, just use either of these type to check whether my date is correct. Because sometimes if you enter December 11th, it's different from November 12th, right? So that's why you have to make sure you check the date value before you go ahead. If you think the single quote is too troublesome, you can also do it this way. Let's say November 12th, so I have to do 12. And then instead of doing backslash like above, I will do a forward slash and then 11, which is the month, and then slash the 4-digit year. And again, I'm going to check my date, but this time I'm not really sure it's November 12th. Yeah, good. November 12th, because the date time value is always a big problem for a database. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We can add a validation to our settlement post and settlement trans date. Alt-DL to bring up the data validation. I'll allow custom, and remember for the date field, you better ignore blank, otherwise you will have problem. You left click the formula and then you go all the way to the settle post date validation. Okay, you just click the first cell and then equals 1. And then press OK. You have to Ctrl+C, Shift and down arrow to select the whole settle post date column and right click Paste Special Validation. Usually I will check my validation, let's say Alt-DL to bring up, and then I will have AP10 equals 1 instead of AP8 because it will go down the row from row 8 to row 10 when you go down the settle post date column. So now I'm going to test my validation. Let's say I press whatever value that is not entered according to the format above. I press tab, then I should expect a warning, right? So let's say if I don't enter a settle transaction number and I enter a date 09/2018, then I should expect a warning also. Now I enter a valid settlement number and then I enter, let's say September 12th, 2018, then I should be able to go through. So we do the same for settlement transaction date, Alt-DL to bring up the data validation, and then I press allow and custom, then I untick ignore blank, left click the formula, then I go all the way down to the rightmost column, which is the settle trans date validation column, and I select the first cell, which is AQ8, and it has to be equal to 1. Then let me go back to the settle transaction date column, Ctrl+C, Shift and down arrow to select the whole settle trans date column, right click, paste special, tick the validation, just copy the validation, then enter a date to test. Let me try this. August 13, I should expect a warning message because it's not entered according to this format. Alright, then let me enter 13th of August 2018, then I should be able to go through. The next one, let's say if I enter August 13 again, 08/13, which is the date, /08 August, and then 2018. Then I should be able to go through also. And now I'm going to try entering a date without entering a settlement transaction number. Then I should expect a warning message. 2018. Yep, good. That means our validation worked. Ctrl+S to save. Okay, now we are going to add a conditional format to these two columns. Let me press Alt-D, add a new rule, select use a formula to determine which cells to format, and then left click the format values. Then we go all the way to the settle trans number validation, which is this one. So let me just press F4. If this one is not equal to 1, then we return a white space and a red color cell. Okay. So when we see a red value inside the settle post date column, then we know we have entered something wrong. So just select the single column. Very strange. I just don't understand why. So apply. So this one works. So let me select the first cell of the transaction date and then Alt-D go to, let me just delete this one and add a new rule. Use a formula to determine the cell, and then left click this. Select the settle trends number validation again. Press F4 3 times until I change it to relative reference. When it's not equal to 1, we just format a cell with white background and font in red. Okay, left click that and applies to the settle trends date column. Applied it. Okay, so hopefully it works this time. Yeah, it works. So just remember, when you do conditional formatting, select the first row of the column. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.